Welcome to episode 2 of the Everything Delivery podcast. In this podcast, we will discuss anything and everything that helps deliver value to clients while maintaining a healthy and happy organisation. This episode of Everything Delivery is sponsored by Nearform. Nearform have over 10 years experience in remote delivery, empowering clients to succeed in the digital world through application modernisation, data, design, DevOps, and product. You can find out more at nearform.com. I'm Dan Close, and I'm here with my co-host Luca Lanziani. Luca, we've lost our way a little bit, haven't we?
Well, we said we were going to do one episode every week, and what is now 2 weeks, probably something like that, right? So
something like that.
I think we started with great expectation. We wanted to set up ourselves for a challenge, and then life and work and all the other things happens, and so there you go. So
definitely life and everything got in the way, right?
So
kids, work.
For the listeners that don't know, I have 2 young kids, right? 2 young kids each, yeah. And so it goes how it goes, right? But at the same time, we decided that was not over. We want to do more. So yes, this podcast is gonna move to probably once every 2 weeks, right? But we may come up with a different format, don't we?
Yeah, that's the plan. So a short 15-minute kind of newscast seems like it would fill the gap, keep us in touch with people and what's going on in the world, right? That's the plan.
Yeah, and what was the name?
I can't remember. It's catchy though, right?
Yeah, it's like something like Digital Pulse. What do you think? I was actually checking my pulse there. So
very good.
Yeah, so what we plan to do there again is to analyze what are the latest news in the market, always with the lens of what are the value that they provide, or using the lens even in case of news like moving away from the cloud to on-prem, all these kind of things that are happening, right? They may be launches on new services, there may be relevant news on the market, always keeping the lens of value, right? What is the value?
Yeah.
Cool, but what
Might even be some AI in there?
Well, probably.
Some large language models.
I don't know if there's
not too much.
I'm not sure if there's going to be any news about AI, right? It hasn't been there for past, many years. It looks like they...
Yeah, there's no such thing, right? As artificial general intelligence.
AGI. How do you say in English? AGI?
AGI, yeah, artificial general intelligence versus generative artificial intelligence, which is a fun mistake to make, not one you probably want to make, at least if you're client-facing anyway.
But digital pulse aside, let's go back to the topic of this episode, right? What are we going to talk about today? What is the topic of this video, Dan?
Right, so today we're going to talk about Open Telemetry. So if you cast your mind back to 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, whenever the last episode went out, we talked about observability, and we mentioned that one way of doing observability was with Open Telemetry. So today, as promised, we're going to go into Open Telemetry and the kind of value that it can help you deliver for your business. So a sensible place to start then is perhaps with a quick recap of observability. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that works. So what is observability about? What are the values?
Okay, so we last time out we mentioned 3 key areas when it comes to observability. So the first was informed decision making, right? So by collecting data, you are able to look at the entire estate, your entire system, and understand what's happening within it. And by doing so, you're able to make informed decisions about what you do next, ideally proactively. The second is cost optimization. So it might sound a little bit strange to talk about cost optimization and observability, but they're very much going hand in hand, right? So both of them are about collecting data and visualizing the right kind of data. So we said in the last episode that it's about telling a story. Now, it's not just about your kind of resiliency and your SRE story. You can also tell stories around security, compliance, performance, as I said, cost optimization too, right? And that's great. Now, those two things two kind of key areas lead to or make the third pillar possible. And this is this idea that by having a good observability strategy, you can use it to enhance your customer experience, right? So if you have a system and you understand what's going on and you can be proactive and put all these kind of measures in place to make sure things don't go wrong, you should hopefully walk away with a system that has reduced downtime, it has better reliability, it's faster, and that's going to make your customers happy. It should mean they spend more time on your site, they might spend more money on your site, they might pick up other services that you offer based on you having this fantastic reputation, right? So that's the value of having observability, I think, from a business lens. And that's all well and good, right? But we both know that this space is absolutely packed with a bunch of different offerings. Some companies have wonderful products that have great reputations, and other companies perhaps aren't in such a luxurious position. So why Open Telemetry? What does that bring to the party? How does it enhance the space?
Okay, I'll definitely answer that question, but let me first emphasize even more what you said before, right? The cost optimization piece, I love that, right? We tend to look at observability from a performance and resilience perspective. That's what we think about when we think about observability. But to me, and I think to you as well, right, it's very important to know that once you have the data, there is a lot that you can do with it, right? Once you have the data, you
Absolutely.
can use the data for all the other means. As you say, let me reiterate, security, compliance, cost optimization, but even more, right? It doesn't stop there. Those are just some of the examples. But
Absolutely.
just to go back to your question, OpenTelemetry and the value that OpenTelemetry provides. First one to me is probably the most obvious, is don't reinvent the wheel, right? We know that as, well, I don't say that, probably this is not just specific to software, but we know that as software people, right, we love to do that. We love to reinvent the wheel. And it may be because we love problems. We see a new challenge and we say, like, why should we use something that's out there? Let me try to solve this problem myself.
Yep.
It may be because we think we can do it better. Who knows, right? There's a little bit ego there playing. But let me be clear. In this specific case, you don't want to do that because you have expert that can do that for you way better. You want the expert people working on this problem. Now, there are a lot of tools out there, and we can think that for metrics, for instance, it should be pretty easy, right? You just pick a tool, right? And there are a plethora of tools out there that measures CPU, memories, and etc. And since we tend to measure those from the outside of our application, right? Most of the tools can come for free. They can come for free from your infrastructure providers, right? And so on. The same cannot be said for log and tracing. Those needs to be embedded in your code to get the most out of it, right? To get the most value out of that.
Absolutely.
And you may think I'm going to use the libraries provided by the software, right? Provided by the language. But even there, you have another problem. The problem is that you're going to end up with a bunch of logs or a bunch of traces that may look different from each other. And so you have the issue of reconciling those. And that's where OpenTelemetry can help you, right? Of course, having the right data is important. So, I mean, getting the logs in all the places and all the things that we know. But it's even more important to have the right format for the data. So OpenTelemetry offers you conformity. And by conformity, we mean it defines standard, rules, laws, right, that regulate how this data will look like. A sort of a contract, if you want. And then it provides you with uniformity. Why uniformity? Because with OpenTelemetry, you can actually have all the logs looking the same, all the metrics looking the same, all the traces looking the same. And that's a very important thing as well. Also, most of the life cycle of the metrics, log and tracing, are not in your code. You generate the data there, but then they're going to travel and they're going to let somewhere. Where? In those observability tools that we all know about, right? Mm-hmm. And it's there that we want to manipulate, store, transform those data. And at those operations that are critical for us to be able to get the most value out of those data. Having OpenTelemetry defining the format will allow you to do things like temporal aggregation, spatial aggregation, delta to cumulative, but also you're going to have interoperability, something that we're going to touch upon later on. So to reiterate, OpenTelemetry has the format defined for you, or they use standard industry format like the W3C for trace context that will not only help you consolidate your data, but allow you to easily move your data from system to system. And we will talk again about this a little bit later.
Cool. So it sounds like then, like flexibility is one of the big things that OpenTelemetry gives. So in any good kind of scientific experiment, you go in with a whole bunch of predefined questions that you want to ask of something, right? You go in with a question or hypothesis, and we try to do the same in the data space, right? You ask the questions you want to ask, or you know the questions you want to ask up front, and then you model the data so you can answer those questions. But with OpenTelemetry, not only does it allow you to do that, it also gives you this mechanism to, when you're in a scenario where you need to take the data and quickly ask a question, you want a rapid answer that doesn't just look at one particular component, you can ask it across this entire system. That is really where it really kind of excels. So when things are exploding around you, you're actually in a really good position. I mean, other than the fact the world's on fire, right, and nothing's going as you expect. So that sounds awesome. That said, though, right, if I'm off in data land and I'm working on my Python stuff and I'm doing a bit of Rust because it's a really good day, and then you're off in Kubeland doing some Go and some other things. And fundamentally, right, we're working on completely different stacks and completely different spaces. So how does OpenTelemetry help bridge that kind of gap?
That's interesting because, as I said above, right, that's another value of OpenTelemetry, the fact that it's cross-platform, or at least is not tied to a specific platform, right? OpenTelemetry is a standard, is defined, right? And so that standard is something that you can use also to avoid vendor lock-in as much as allowing interoperability between different tools. So let's stay a little bit on the vendor lock-in for a second, right? So you want to ensure that you have the best tool for the job under any set of condition. For example, let's assume that, let's take two of the big observability out there, Dynatrace and Datadog. I'm not trying to pick on anyone, right? But two names that came to mind. Let's suppose that one of those two billing systems don't fit your model anymore. I'm not talking about the system is too expensive. I'm not saying that, right? I'm saying that let's suppose that the licensing is based, let's assume, on metrics, and you're scaling, right, on now you have more metrics than user, and maybe there is the other system that the license is on user, so it depends where you land, you may save money, right?
Yep.
Then what do you do if you are on board 100% with their agents? In order to move, you're going to spend a lot of effort trying to transition to one or another. With OpenTelemetry, instead, this move should be easier. Or
just pointing from one point to another point, right?
Yes, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder than that. Maybe you're going to still have to invest a little bit of operational effort, but definitely less complex than when you're completely on board. The same thing is if you want to move to a vendor to paying the operational cost of maintaining the stack yourself. That is still valid, right? All of these independent of the organization you are, right? The stage of the life that you are on, in many, many things. But still, having this flexibility, it's pretty nice. I don't know if you heard not too long ago about the story of Coinbase and the amount of money they had to spend on observability, right? Again,
yes, I'm slightly familiar with it.
We're going to probably leave the link in the show notes. I'm not going to mention the observability platform they were using, but there was a staggering number there. Now, again, without going into details if that number is right or wrong, without going into details on discussing if it's right to spend all that money, because maybe you really care about your observability, and maybe, the amount of things that we're getting out were justified, right? Was justifying this spend.
Well, if the amount it's costing you pales in significance to the amount of money you're making, then it's okay. I guess it's then when you stop having that kind of bumper period, then your kind of requirements change, right?
Yes, but what we're talking about here is having the opportunity to change your mind, move to something different, and so on. Another case is if you want to use different tools for different purposes.
Yep.
You may end up having to do that, right? You may end up having to slice again the data in different ways for your developer team, for your business team. We said in the last episode that your organization is layered. Yes, that's what we say, right? Let's assume that at every different layer will want to see the same data in a different format, in a different way, with different tooling. Having the same tool, defining a standard, and knowing that those vendors can import this data type will help you to do that. Also, where you mentioned about languages, right? You were talking about languages. We also know that OpenTelemetry support multiple languages out of the box. Not just in theory, but actively providing libraries that your team can easily embed, right? And for some of the languages, OpenTelemetry also allows to enable the other instrumentation. And from the top of my head, I think it was, at least for Java, Node.js, I think Python was the third one, right? I also remember that if you're on Kubernetes, and that's something that we're gonna probably make another episode about, you can use the OpenTelemetry operator that is gonna auto-inject instrumentation for Java, Node.js, and Python into your application. So again, having this tool, it's not even a tool, this community, this project that is defining a standard helps you connecting all the systems together and then reading the data.
I mean, I must confess, I might have to take the day off when it comes to Kubernetes talk, but we'll see how that goes. Right. So then the value, what we're saying, the value here of OpenTelemetry is that it has really deep integration and massive flexibility up and down the stack, right? So in practice, this means you can address, as you say, not just the developer concerns, so things like your system metrics, so CPU, memory, and disk, infrastructure metrics, the kind of stuff you see from CloudWatch, and your application metrics, such as performance and error tracking. But you can also provide your business users with a different perspective. I mean, as you say, right, we don't expect your developers and your business users to all be using Grafana, right? I mean, while that might be fun for some, probably not so much for the business users. But when it does come to the business folks, it allows them to look at things, the kind of classic things like, how many active users do I have? What's my churn rate? How many customer signups have I got? Where do people fall out of my customer journey? What are the drop-off points? That is super, super powerful. And it sounds wonderful, right? But then I'm not paying for this. It's open source. So we mentioned this at the start. How does this story play out when we have a vast number of companies that you pay an enormous amount of money for, and then you've got this free thing? What's going on there? How does this play out in OpenTelemetry's favor?
Yeah, let me first say that I love Grafana, right? I love Grafana, and that ties into what I'm just to say, right? Open source can be a superpower as well, and the fact that this is an open source tool can be a superpower, especially if we de-risk it, right? We have seen how we move from projects being developed by a single developers in their basement, or at least that's the stereotype, right? Probably right now the developer is in their penthouse with a 5K euros laptop, which is 10 gigabyte of RAM, right? Something like that. But to moving to foundations, right now there is this thing of foundation. There's the Linux Foundation, there's the CNCF, multiple foundations are where the main players in the industry actively participate, but with time and money to move things forward, right? So it's still open source. It still respect the open source philosophy. You can use it. You can do whatever you want with it. With, some caveats about keeping the license and all of that, right? Let's not go into the weeds there. But then, right now you have de-risked it, right? You don't have just the best mind at work, but also a sufficient budget and push to keep things running. OpenTelemetry, for instance, is part of the CNCF, and multiple vendors, right? Multiple observability vendors support OpenTelemetry, and some of them even contribute to it, such Grafana Labs, right? The one that we just mentioned, Splunk,
Yep.
Dynatrace, and many other. And maybe you're listening, right? You're listening to this podcast, or your organization can also contribute. That's another big value, right? As part of the community-based development. Being part of it, being part of the discussion, will allow you to stay ahead of the market, because you're going to have internal insights of what's happening, and you're going to know how things are moving. You can stay on top of the game. You can control your own destiny. That was deep.
Which is a great place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So if you're looking to start or even to enhance your observability platform, OpenTelemetry is a great place to start, or it's a great place to lead from. You can invest, or you should invest internally, but also we would encourage you to also, if you can, contribute back to the project. It's the right thing to do, and it's really, as you say, Luca, it's why open source has these wonderful superpowers. So our next episode then is going to lead on from where we are today. So we've talked about observability, we've talked about open telemetry and how it can help you optimize your costs. So the next logical step is to talk about FinOps, and it's not just about saving money, right?
It is not. And for that, maybe we can attach on the link on the show notes about the blog post that we wrote about it.
I think that's a very, very sensible thing. So I'd encourage you, please go and read it and let us know what you think in the comments. That said, let's wrap up. So you can find us as per normal. Our website is everything.delivery. You can see the video on YouTube. So that's youtube.com/@everythingdelivery. The podcast is also available on Spotify and Apple Music. Independently, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Discord. That's it. Until next time, thank you very much for watching and listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.